Hello, 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 Carl's Conversations. Hello, Facebook also. Welcome to another edition of Carl's Conversations. This is a continuation of our talk about the movement and several issues contained therein. So if you're catching us on my Facebook page, God bless you. Welcome. Also, this is available on my YouTube channel, Carl's Conversations. And Carl's Conversations is spelled just like you see it in my name tag, all one word. If you make it two words, you're going to go to another Carl's Conversation, but he's not me. This one is me. So once again, thank you all so much for gathering with us today. And as you can see from the description and the title, we're going to be talking about the movement, and we're going to be talking about reform, police reform, criminal justice reform, social justice reform, all kinds of things. I will admit to you, this was kind of hastily put together, and so we do have a few who may join us a little later in the conversation, and some were just not able to make it. So this is live production, so don't be surprised if we have some additions. And so far in our panel today, we have, please say your name correctly so I won't chop it up.
Laura Shay.
Lord Shay. Now, see, I was going to say something totally different.
Probably LaRasha.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So it is Lord Shay.
Laura Shay. So it's
Lord Shay.
broken down between the A and the S. Laura Shay.
There we go. Laura Shay. And my wife, Tisha, she's joined us today. And let me tell you, Tisha and I have been chatting back and forth for the past, ever since we sat there and watched that video of Mr. Floyd's death. I think it's been a continuous conversation. So, to our listeners, I will let you know that if you want to make comments, you're more than welcome to do so. If you make comments or ask questions that we're able to get to during this conversation, we'll absolutely do that. We encourage you to make comments, even if your comments are disagreeable to what we're talking about. We're not necessarily looking for agreement as much as we're looking for understanding. It's all good. Hey, Paulette, you didn't miss nothing. If you want to join, come on here. You got the link. Paulette, she was going to be part of our panel, but I think she was running some errands. But if she wants to join, I want her to join right in. I've already made the announcement that some may be joining while we're in progress. So, Paulette, if you want to join the conversation, please hit your link and I'll pull you right in. So, to our audience, we're going to be talking about a few things today, and I haven't put a time limit so much on the conversation. We're going to have a nice flowing conversation, and the time will be determined by how well the conversation goes and your involvement. If you want to ask a question or if you want to make a comment, hey, we'll definitely deal with that. So today, what we're going to be dealing with is police and criminal justice reform. We're going to talk about crime in our community. Some like to call it black on black crime, but we're going to get into that why we're not going to call it that here, aren't we, ladies? There is a reason. We're going to deal with voter registration, Confederate monuments, and the progress and the goals of the movement, and anything else movement related that I may not have written down here. We'll get to it. And like I said, we strongly encourage your comments or your questions. If we can get to them, we most certainly will. So I want to start with police reform. For those who follow me, I did a panel last Saturday. I had three young men, three millennials. They were all 33 years old. And the question that I asked was, what does police reform look like to you? And so, Laura Shay, I'm going to start with you, and I'll ask you that question, and from there we'll get into the criminal justice thing. I just want the conversation to flow, and then Tisha, we're going to come to you. So, Laura Shay, what does police reform look like to you?
For me, I'm totally for police reform. Let me be very clear on that. And it's because police reform is basically bringing resources into the community and experts into the community. Police are not trained to handle mental illness. They take a week or two course on it, but a week or two course versus a doctor or a counselor who studies that would be better to handle someone with mental illness or drug addiction, or maybe a young teen mother or a father who is just needing help to get back into the workforce. So police reform is taking funds and putting it behind different resources to help the community in whatever the need is for that community. It's also training the police to help in the areas of the community. So it's not just about pulling over for tickets or going to domestic violence calls and things like that. It's how to handle that, having the resources behind it. So if we equip the community with what they need, essentially behavior, certain incidents that happen can decrease because we are giving them the very thing that they're crying out for without having to actually say, this is what I need. We're giving it to them up front because that is seems to be a lot of problem in some of the communities. They don't know the resources that are out there, and by the time they do know it, it's almost too late in a sense because now we're ready to label them and put them in jail when all they needed was better community centers, resources to help get occupy the children after school, resources to help a father who's been laid off, and now that he's laid off he needs to get back into the workforce, but there's so many doors before he can get back into that. Why not have a open line communication versus the middleman? So that's what police reform looks like to me.
And I want to say some, Tisha, right before you get in. I'm so glad you brought those points up because I think that so many times, number one, that whole police reform thing, it is very upsetting and offensive to some people. But I'm amazed because some of the same people who get upset and are offended by that, they're the same ones who will tell you that our law enforcement officers are stressed out. Well,
Yeah.
we recognize that, right? We recognize
You,
that.
you know, one thing I think about is why is it that police officers, I think here in our area, police officers go to police academy, I think 3 months. I think it's 3 months. Don't quote me on that. But our barbers, our beauticians, they got to go to school for like 2 years
Hmm.
to do my
That's
hair.
right.
But you
That's
don't
right.
have to go to school for a long period of time to handle a weapon and to handle people of all caliber. But someone in a hair industry got to go to school longer than someone who carries a weapon. I what the world is that about?
It is so crazy. And let me take a break and welcome Paulette Howard and Tia Terry. And listen, I told you all when we first came on that we were going to have some live additions, and these ladies are awesome. Thank you all so much. I know everybody is so busy, but thank you for being a part of our conversation today. And we've already got about 8 minutes into it. You didn't miss much. I'll reiterate today we're going to be talking about police and criminal justice reform, crime in our community, what some people call black on black crime, but we don't call it that. And y'all all know why, right? Uh, White folks kill white folks too. We're going to talk about voter registration, Confederate monuments. I know that's a hot topic. Also, the progress and goals of the movement. So, Laura Shea just gave us her vision of what police reform looks like. And one thing I was just saying is that, some of the opponents of police reform are the same ones who tell us how overworked and how stressed they are. And we say we agree. You shouldn't be handling mental health cases. You shouldn't be handling social cases that should be handled by social workers. We agree police ought not be doing that. And that is the reason why we want to reimagine policing. And I'm going to have to get some people up here who disagree because some of it I don't understand. And I really want to understand. So, Tisha, I'm going to go to you next and ask you the same question. What does police reform look like to you?
What police reform looks like to me is that you have police officers that understand and know their community. In my personal opinion, I think the police officers that serve the community should live in the community. You know, back in the days when we were coming up, if you did do a little something to get yourself in a potential situation where you had police interaction, they knew you on a first name basis. They knew who your family was. It was like they were protecting a village. You know, so many times you see today they're so quick to throw you in jail. And, sometimes it's a simple conversation. Oftentimes I see, I believe his name is Officer Tommy Norman in Arkansas. He interacts with the children. It doesn't make a difference that he's a white police officer, but he knows the community in which he is serving, and he truly makes a difference. I think you have to understand the language that is spoken, and don't be so quick to throw people away. Everybody can have an off day as far as, just venturing over into the mental health. There are so many times our communities and people as a whole, there are so many things that they are dealing with where they can have a mental breakdown. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a bad person, but in those situations, are the police officers capable of handling that situation? I've seen situations where, the police officer is doing the best that they can, but in some cases, they really don't have an understanding on what's going on with the person, what caused them to break, what's causing them to act out. And I think in those cases, you should have a social worker, somebody that works in the mental health industry, because they can better serve those individuals that are having that mental break versus a police officer sitting in the hospital with a person that has had a moment, or, they smoke some bad drugs or something like that. There are certain things that cause you to just wig out or have a moment. But in my opinion, I don't think that the police officers are trained to that capacity where they can, not the individuals that are having the breakdown, where they don't put them in danger and the police officers themselves are in danger. I think if it is identified as a mental case or a breakdown, it should be referred to someone where then they can turn over the reins and they can remove themselves, because there's so many situations that they are not trained for, which therein lies causes a problem. If somebody is, I'm just saying, for example, if somebody is autistic, that is nonverbal, if it happens to be a black person or a brown person, they are automatically treated as bad as somebody that doesn't know how to respond. Next thing you know, you're face down on the concrete, and you're nonverbal. So here you have a whole situation that has escalated, and so many times things are not approached in the manner when dealing with black and brown people. Although they may have de-escalation training, when I see different videos and things of that nature, it is not de-escalate. It's coming in, you got your gun ready. And I think certain situations you need to come in and assess the situation. Just like when you enter a room, you don't come in loud and robust. You come in and make an assessment as to what is going on to see what you can do to help. Don't antagonize the situation. So I think as a whole, as far as police reform, I think you need to live within the community in which you're serving. I think I also agree that funds should be reallocated for the communities to better serve, to offer different programs. I think it should be reformed in how they deal with black and brown people, because we've all seen videos where our white counterparts can walk down the street with a gun. You can see a black or brown man, and the results are different. You have to know who your community is in which you're serving. Don't be afraid. If you have all of the equipment, handcuffs, tasers, billy club stick, and a gun, and you're afraid because you see somebody that is black or brown, you shouldn't be in that profession, in my humble opinion. If you are scared that your first interaction, you pulling the trigger, you need to find another profession to be in. Now that's just my little take on it.
Well, you gave us a take. Right before I go to you, we're gonna go to Kia and then Paulette. Right before I go to you, I want to read a a comment by one of our viewers today, and he is a man that I served in the army with in Germany way back in 92, 93. He has some differing political views, but he is an ally of humanity, and so he is one of the persons I really like to talk to, because you want to talk to somebody sometimes who doesn't always see the things the way you see them. And one thing he
Right.
said is, I appreciate the explanation and 100% agree. These reforms would benefit all people and just make sense. Police reform sounds better than defund the police. I think much of the disagreement comes from just not understanding. Laura Shea explained it very well. And I agree. I have often said, for anybody who watches my videos, I said time and time again, I don't think that defund the police was the best term to use to try to describe what we're doing. I think reimagining policing works better. So Tia, I want to come to you, and as we are, starting this conversation, unpacking it. Police reform. What does that look like to you? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
So, can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, this is a subject that's really close to me because I have family who are police officers, detectives, and the like. And so I agree off the bat. I agree. Defund the police was definitely the bad term to use because I mean they need funding, right, in order to keep us safe as well. But I think this thing with police reform is really complicated. I think it's very complex. I know Tisha, she mentioned Officer Norman. I've been following him for a great amount of years now. The thing about the police departments is we know there are different departments, so different people have different roles where they serve. So when you have like the Officer Normans, of course, he has that ability to engage with the community because he's in a part of the division where it's not as like, let's say, drug deals, or he's not dealing with in harsh environments all the time. So, understanding that and how the department is made up will give us a better understanding of what the terms that we should use when we talk about either defund or reform, police reform. One thing that's I've been talking about lately about police reform is how I feel as though a third party should always be the one to oversee and police the police department, because I think that when you have like for instance internal affairs, they still belong to whatever that police department structure is. So of course there's a certain level of bias there, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I think that there should always be an outside agency that always comes in cases and take a look at it because they're unbiased. Keeping it internal, it's hard for the community to trust that. So if
Right.
you're trying to gain the trust of the community, you have to first look at how you're being policed,
Right.
how you're being managed. So that's what it looks like to me, is taking a look at the department structure and saying, okay, is it a great idea for us to have internal investigators oversee these issues or these in my opinion, these criminal acts, because I think it's a criminal act when you're murdering these people out in the streets. So that's how it pretty much essentially looks to me. And also because I said this before, like in the case of like my uncle, who I talk to about this all the time, a lot of times they see things that are wrong and they have a hard time reporting it. So
Hmm.
even internally, the ones who are good cops or the ones who do have an issue, they find it hard to report it without any retaliation. Or,
Hmm.
and they'll say it's not retaliation. My aunt like used the word nice nasty. Like they still kind of nice to you, but behind your back, they're still trying to hold you down, not promote you, that type of thing. And so I mentioned how my uncle says the reason why he stays because he could leave. I mean, he's got the money to be able to retire. He stays because he wants to be that present in the community, that presence in the community. And he says that it just makes him feel good knowing that there's someone there who's on their side in the community. So as long as he can serve, he's going to serve. But so yeah, police reform definitely looks to me, um, getting to know the community in which you are policing. I think that it is difficult sometimes to live in the community where you're policing, because when you think about the number of police they need to properly serve in the community, it's probably not really ideal to all of them to live there. But I
Right.
definitely think the appropriate term is they need to serve in that community in which they're policing,
Yes.
whether
Yes.
that's volunteer at a Boys and Girls Club, volunteer at a community center, volunteer at a
Hmm.
homeless shelter, whatever. They need to be able to serve. It should be a requirement to serve in the community. I remember when I worked for Booz Allen for short amount of time, one of the things that was required of us is that we had to do a volunteer. We had certain volunteer hours that we should be doing um, a year, and they use that when they talk about promotions and stuff. I think that's such a wonderful idea, because a part of humanity is caring for one another. And if you're just living in your own little bubble and you never get to know who's around you, when you have these times where you're interacting with people who, as we say, and maybe irate or having mental breakdown, you don't really know how to handle it because number one, you're not even a people person at the bare minimum. So I definitely think that that level of understanding is needed, and everything that everyone else has said about social workers and mental health workers and all that being engaged, I think that is absolutely needed as well. But it's always going to be a case by case situation because in the case of Rashard Brooks, which you, Carl and Laura Shea heard me talk about this, in the case of him, the incident at Wendy's, that thing went like from 0 to 100 in a matter of split seconds. There was
Yes.
no way to engage a mental health worker or whatever. It was totally calm, and then all of a sudden, boom.
Right.
And and I try to take myself out of the put myself in the position of the police officer, and I actually had a lengthy conversation with my uncle after this because I can't imagine how it feels as a police officer when
Right.
you're entangled in that. You don't know if they're
Mhm.
pulling your weapon. You don't know if you're about to get shot, killed. You're in this hard situation and you're just thrown in it. Something that you thought that was going to be such an easy arrest of a DUI quickly turned into life or death. So I think that, I try to, I'm a woman of faith, so I try to not just go, oh, Black Lives Matter, oh, they killed another black. I try to take every situation separately and say, man, what could we have learned from this? What happened? What went wrong? Because I truly do not believe that it's always, oh, the cops are wrong for doing what they did, in the
Right.
sense that, let me backtrack. I won't say not wrong. I would say that it's hard for us to just say it was wrong when we're not tossed in that situation. So I think that, and then the other thing that I hate is that we put racism on it. We'll say, oh, that cop was racist. Because what happens is when you keep putting that out, it just keeps the tensions heightened. So every time a situation happens, that cop is already going in there like, okay, we're in the middle of a Black Lives Matter movement. So they're already somewhat fearful. And I think what's happening in social media today is so much fear has been put out there on both sides, the cops and the black people or the black and brown people. So when an incident happened, automatically it is escalated without it needing to be escalated. And I'm gonna say this last point, and I'm gonna be quiet. But I was just looking at a video the other day where, and this is where we play our part, where a young man was getting arrested, and the cops was telling him to put his hands behind his back, and he wouldn't. And he was being rightfully arrested because there are situations where you should be arrested. And they kept telling him to put his hands behind his back, and he was resisting. So there was some bystanders who were looking, and there were men of color too, and they literally got down on the ground with the young man and was like, man, just stop resisting, put your hands behind your back, it's okay, just let them arrest you, we'll figure it out. They were literally coaching him through it, like, don't do this, because they
Right.
didn't want to
Mhm.
see him getting killed. And I just thought that was so wonderful and empowering, because a lot of times we see wrong and we won't do anything. Or in the case of Rashard Brooks, I said, all of those people who were in the Wendy's drive through, why didn't anyone get out and say, my man, calm down, don't, no, don't do that? They never did that. They let it go and go and go and go, and they saw that he was talking crazy. He was clearly drunk, and he kept saying he wasn't drunk. So I'm like, why did anyone get out and say, man, calm, this not right, do this, or coach him? But as soon as he got shot, everybody was speaking. Oh, y'all wrong for shooting him.
Mhm.
But y'all stood there and watched him do all of this. Why didn't you say something then on the behalf of the brother?
Right.
So I think we all have a role to play in this, and I just think that oftentimes my people, and y'all know how much I love my people, we don't look at internally either. We're quick
But
to
we're
look
gonna talk about that
externally
today.
without looking internally.
We're gonna talk about it. That's why I
All
got
right.
you
And
here. So
to
hold on one
add
second.
to
Hold on one second. I'm gonna get to Paul at first, teachers, then I'm gonna come back to you. So hold your thought. But I want to say
okay.
something. We had another comment. Allison, she said people tend to listen when you play with their money, defund them. So let me just say this right here. For people who don't know, I don't do any prep of my guests before I bring them on, other than to give them a cursory overview of what we're going to talk about. Correct? I have no
Correct.
agenda. I don't know what anybody's gonna say, and I don't want to know because I'm not trying to just drive a point. What I'm trying to do, one of my gifts is dialogue, right? So I'm using my gift in this movement to have conversations. What's happening is the major thing that's driving me here is I get so tired of watching the news and everybody else telling us in the movement what we're saying. And I'm saying, no, that's not what we're saying. Today is what we're saying. And as you can see, there are many different opinions about this thing. Allison on one end saying, take that money, right? Uh, LaRoche on the other end is saying, no, 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 it's not just about taking money. Some of that is going to be reallocated. Some of that militarized equipment they don't need, and we need to take some of that and invest in other portions like social workers and mental health professionals so that we can reimagine the policing. That's what we're talking about. And so we have several comments. Crystal Harmon said, serve in the community, a definite prerequisite. And Crystal also said, that's why training is so important. Adrenaline is real. And when you're a cop and trying to make it out of a situation alive. And let me say this, Allison also wants to add her dad was a cop in the city for 36 years, and he agrees. Hey, we have a lot of opinions. Allison, I want you to stand by because I'm going to do another one of these. I'm inviting you on because I want to hear your voice. Okay, so the reason why I take the time and interject here is because I really want the audience to understand. And Tia, I really appreciate your viewpoint, and you have a viewpoint that many others don't have. You have several members of your family who are law enforcement officers, but they're also Black Americans. So they live in the Black American thing when they out of uniform. Because we get a lot of Black police telling us that when they get stopped by other cops, it's not very friendly. But they also have to put the uniform on and serve. So, that's that. So, Paulette just went out just for a second. So, Tisha, you had a thought. Please bring that thought forth.
I was just going to piggyback off of what it was that Tia was saying, when she was making reference to Rashard Brooks and the Wendy's. So oftentimes, um, sometimes they don't have anything to do with me, so in the case of life and death, I think it is required. It is our duty to protect our fellow brothers and sisters, right, wrong, and different. There are certain situations that you really need to speak up and you can't take the stance of, that's not my business. It don't have anything to do with me because you can be here and 15 seconds you're no longer here, and it could have been something, just someone stepping in to potentially de-escalate the situation, to show the police in that situation that there are friendly people that are trying to de-escalate the situation, to say, man, just do the right thing, let them arrest you, don't resist. And then that shows the police that not everybody is out to get you. Another thing that I forgot to add in regards to my stance on police reform, for all of the police officers that are doing what it is that they're supposed to be doing, we truly appreciate it. Um, However, the bad apples, they most certainly spoil the bunch. I also think that once you become a police officer, it should be just like a doctor. You have continuing medical education. I think there should always be continuous training on how to do things better when you have situations that arise. Maybe do an after action report. Okay, how could we have done this better to better serve our community, and from an aspect of not be so quick to kill people, try to de-escalate the situation and have an understanding. And I also understand there are certain situations that escalate very quickly. It's just how you approach a situation to, you know, to get situations resolved. That's what I just wanted to add.
Got it.
Can
Thank
I
you.
say something? Because I have to
Sure.
Yeah.
say this before we
Go ahead.
move on, because I don't want to get too far from the subject. When you talk about defunding the police, we have to remember that the same pot that we're talking about defund also funds the income of the good cops. So when you
Yeah.
talk about defunding the police, you're going to affect those people who are truly in the community serving right. So that's why I always say that we can't be our worst enemy by saying things like defund. We have to use terms like reallocate. maybe have a third party accounting person, financial person that goes in and say, hey, you need to put more money here. It's like the case of the teacher who has to go out of their pocket and spend money on supplies because and they're already not getting paid what they should be getting paid. So you have to remember these cops, a lot of times they're not getting paid a lot of money, and yet they're out here risking their lives on a daily basis. So I absolutely disagree with defunding and taking money out of the police pockets, out of the department's pockets. I think that we should reallocate that money. And some of these banks that's getting bailed out by the government, I don't understand why they are not over have more oversight and actually giving some of the money to these training programs or to
Mhm.
making sure the police are properly equipped with the knowledge and the wisdom and everything that they need to be able to handle these situations. In addition to that, on the other side of the coin, when it comes to financing, we need to start hitting these people's these what do you call them, those who commit the offense. We need to start hitting their retirements, their pensions, making them pay. When restitution
Yes.
is paid to the family, why the police department pays the full restitution to the family? You need to hit the cop that got charged, or whatever the case may be. Because she's absolutely right. Whoever said people respond to money, but it's got to be hitting them in the right pocket. The right pocket needs to be
Right.
hit because that bad person pocket gets hit and their pension is on the line. I guarantee you they're going to quit the force when they get hit enough, or they're going to cut it out and clean it up.
I
Right.
agree.
I
And
agree.
this is why I wanted to have these conversations. I think our audience really needs to see what we're saying, right? I get
Yeah.
so frustrated, so frustrated when I look at the news. It's like, no, 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 that's not what we're saying. So I want to continue this. I'm probably going to set this up for every Saturday at noon. That's my goal for the next few Saturdays because I want to keep having these conversations. I want the audience to see what we are saying. And I think that we can agree already, at this point in the conversation, that what's really going on here is bigger than police reform. Police reform is a big chunk. It's something that we have to deal with, and that rolls right into what I want to talk about. Also, criminal justice reform. Criminal justice has three major parts to it: law enforcement, which encompasses the police reform that we've been talking about, the courts, and then correction. And we've already dealt with the police reform thing, but when you start dealing with the courts, oh man, I got some information here that I have been reading today, and I mean it is just crazy, right? When you look at some of these statistics, uh, it is crazy. Listen to this: one out of every three black boys born today can expect to be sentenced to prison, compared to one out of every six Latino boys, one out of every 17 white boys. When you look at stuff like that, don't you say to yourself, there's a problem, right? When we look at criminal justice reform, we'll also look at the statistics like this: 5% of illicit drug users are African Americans. Yet African Americans represent 29% of those arrested and 33% of those incarcerated for drug offenses. African Americans and whites use drugs at similar rates, but the imprisonment rate for African Americans for drug charges is almost six times that of whites. As of October 2016, there have been 1,900 exonerations of wrongfully accused. 47% of the exonerated were African Americans. Something wrong with that picture, huh? And
Almost
so
certainly so.
I want people to know that when we come forth and say terms like police reform, criminal justice reform, we're talking about the numbers. This is data, right? That is federally, this data, everybody has it. We all have the same data. I know we all interpret it differently, but we all have the same data. And that's the reason why we're marching, and not just marching. That's the reason why groups like Enough and Stafford Black and the Stafford NAACP are going forth to talk to our local politicians and policymakers to say there has to be change. We are not fairly treated and we're not fairly represented. What does the panel say about that? I'll start with you, Laura Shay.
For me, we have to think the law initially was not made with African American people in mind. When you look at the Constitution, the laws, and things that was in place, we wasn't even considered a person, a human being. We were still property. So things haven't quite changed since then. We've just had to play nice within that realm. So when we talk about the court system, when we're talking about sentencing and we're talking about the rates of Black boys getting, and women as well, but more our boys getting um their sentencing and getting a harsher sentence, we have to look that the system was never made for us in the beginning. So you can't win against something that never had you in mind. Secondly, it's also one of those things where when we talk about the statistics as well, when it comes to the boys, we have to think about who is handing the sentence down. There's a lot of private fund, like it goes so deep. There's a lot of people getting paid for private prison. Some of these judges are getting paid to incarcerate Black people. So it's not even just a matter of like the court. It's private funding. It is the system not made for you. It is also when we look at the drugs, white people tend to be, when they go to jail, when they go to court and the judge, they go to rehab. Where do we go? Prison. But we on both of us on drugs. But I go to prison, they go to rehab. It's only when their counterpartners with the started having a higher rate of drug that they started saying, oh, wait a minute. Let me figure out how we can help get you off drugs. The reform on all those cases that was overturned was only because people fought to say this is not right, because this is why this person went to jail, but this person goes to rehab. So when we say reform the court system, you can't reform something that was never meant for you, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
We have to change that altogether. And
Okay.
that's a whole bigger apple than I think the local level can take on, because that is a more federal level, more Capitol Hill level. So it's like an elephant. You just take those small bites at a time.
I understand. Tisha, Tia.
I would have to agree with Laura Shay in regards to it is really a big apple to bite off of when you're talking about um, you know what the Constitution says, we're listed as three-fifths of a person. And I think, am I hopeful? Yes, I am very hopeful. However, it almost feels like it would be impossible to make the change to come up to speed to where we are in time. Because I would also agree, with Laura Shay, what she's saying, who's handing out the time? I heard someone basically say last night you know, there are certain things that laws didn't have to be implemented for our white counterparts. It had to be implemented for women to have the right to vote. But there hasn't been anything for, when you're making reference to the white man, they were not enslaved. So, when you look at it from that standpoint, it's something that really makes you say, wow, as far as changing the Constitution to make it to come up to speed so it is liberty and justice for all, and also in the pursuit of happiness. Um, I'm hopeful, but it seems almost impossible because here we are talking about, the Confederate flag and the Confederate monuments, and you have some people that say it's our history. Yeah, it's our history that we were also enslaved as black folks. We're trying to come up to speed so we can be considered equal, but it seems as though on one hand you want to keep your knee on my neck and don't allow me to come up to speed and to be, side by side with you, because to me it just seems like there are some of our white counterparts that are afraid that we are going to surpass and do better. Just like Laura Shay was saying in regards to the drugs. When you talk about the opioids, Oh, it's like, what are we going to do? Laws will change so you can no longer do prescriptions a certain way. You can't get a refill, things of this nature. They didn't do that when it came to crack. Oh no, because you had the black man that once he was enslaved and was sent off to prison, originally it was quoted as saying it's to rehabilitate. No, it ain't no rehabilitation, because at the same time, once a person becomes a felon, you basically have taken their rights away to vote. Or I've also heard that there's situations where they allow the prisoners to vote while they're in the system, so a certain person can win the votes come election time. Now, that's all I'm just saying.
All right. And you said it. All right, Tia.
So, you're right. This is a complex situation, and I want to first set the expectation. We're never going to have a perfect system. You're going to always have someone who's dirty in the system. That's in every system, whether it's a church, whether it's the White House. It just doesn't matter. You're going to always have that. However, I will say that I agree with what Laura Shea said as well. The odds are definitely the target is definitely on our back from the time we're born. But I always like to say we know what we're up against though, and when you know what you're up against, then that's my the saying says, if you know the fire's hot, why would you put yourself in the fire? So it's like we know that this is what we're dealing with, and so it's not one of those things where we don't go in equipped with that knowledge. But I will say that when you talk about defunding, that is really where we need to focus our target on, because I don't know if everyone realizes, but the prison system is now privately funded for the most part, whereas before it was federally funded. And so when you talk about people going into prison, it's a cash cow for some of these people to have prisoners in the prison. One of the best depictions of this is the series For Life. I don't know if you guys have watched that series before, but that's a great depiction of how the prison system works, and how the person who owns that particular prison or the company, how they manipulate to try to keep the prisoners in the prison so that they can continue to get that money. But I agree with Laura Shea when she says that it is a disparity when the black or brown person will go to prison, and the Caucasian person or whoever they choose will go to rehab. They kind of play Russian roulette with it. But as far as the court system is concerned, judges and things of that and positions of that nature are normally appointed. So again, it takes us back to voting. So all of these things are kind of interconnected. They all kind of work together. There's no one road that leads to the solution. You have to attack it at so many different angles, but we have to be educated and we have to be engaged, and we can't take our foot off their necks. We have to stay consistent with it, because I remember I was just talking to a client of mine, and she was upset because her son actually entered into the system, and he's a college student now, and luckily the college is taking him back. But she said that the judge that was presiding over his case, actually her daughter overdosed on drugs. So when you
Mm,
have a judge who is overseeing a case who had such trauma dealing with drugs, of course when it comes to a drug case passing in their courtroom, they're going to crack down the books on them, because it's something that she it's like a vendetta. Drugs took my baby out, so absolutely life. You know what I mean? So it's those type of things that happens in the courtroom that kind of breezes over us, because, and I say us as a people, because we are not educated on how it works. And when you hear us then say, well, I'm not voting because voting just that doesn't mean anything, it doesn't matter, then you wonder why we have these disparities, because this is how you attack this problem, because this
right.
person is appointed, and they're appointed by whoever your elected official is, just like the sheriffs in your town, just like the chief of police. All of these are appointed positions. So when you say that voting doesn't matter and you're not going to vote, I can't take you seriously for anything else that you complain about. I just cannot, because I'm not going to waste my energy trying to get you to understand why your son, uncle, brother, father is in the system and is being mistreated, because you just are not trying to comprehend. And it is someone, I saw the comment that came up, said sometimes it's just about their level of understanding. That is absolutely the truth, but you have to come to the table willing to understand. You
Hmm.
have to come open to be educated and open to learn. And that's what my role has been and my purpose has been in all of this, is trying to educate people. Yes, I may not faithfully be out there protesting and marching and all of that stuff, because I think all of that is so all well and good.
Hmm.
But if that does not translate into your vote, if that does not translate into your action, then you're really just spinning like a hamster on a wheel. You're just going to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, but the system is going to change. But I will say this, and then you can move on. It is a marathon, not a race.
Mm.
It's
Amen.
going to take years. So what we're doing right now is going to affect our grandchildren, our grandchildren's children, because it's going to take so much time for this whole system, criminal reform, judicial, prison, even
Law enforcement.
electoral, all of that. It's going to
Yes.
take so long to get all of that, and it is a huge elephant. And when we start, it's like I said, it's going to affect our grandchildren and our grandchildren's children from the moment we start.
Hmm.
So if we never start and we never stay consistent with it, it's never going to
True.
change, ever. And that's the one negative thing I am going to say, because it's
But here we go. Your comment. Go ahead, Lord. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was piggyback on Tia when she was like learning, right? When I was in the Marine Corps, I felt like I was like, man, they keep picking on me. They kept doing this. I had a master sergeant tell me the only way you can fight an institution is with their own words. I had to learn Marine Corps policies and laws beyond what they were telling me. I had to
That's
go
right.
read myself. And then once I did, I was like, oh, they really picking on me. And then I would carry like certain policies. They'll be like, blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, well, right here it says, and they're like, oh. So like Tia said, for us to change, we gotta learn. You can't fight black and white. And when you throw their own laws back at them, then they start like backtracking, like, oh, this person knows something. Can't mess with them.
Well, I tell y'all something. I interviewed my father. I think it was last Sunday or Monday, and that was wow. It was breathtaking for me. He said something that changed a little bit of my trajectory, and we're going to get into that right now. We're going to talk about crime in our community, and this is what he said. And remember, you talking about an old school guy, right? He said, "Son, yeah, we got to reform the police. We got to reform a lot of stuff in this country." He said, "But first, we got to reform our own communities." Because prior to me interviewing him, I had told him about a previous post that I made. And one of the posts I made, I said, I refuse to get out here and go march against the systemic racism in our institutions and then come back home and had to be scared of somebody in my community who looked like me. That's just crazy. And so I'm not going to use the term black on black crime because I'm going to say something. I'm going to give some numbers. The numbers say that about 83% of white people who kill white people, and about 88% of black people who kill black people. But I don't think we would never had a national conversation on white crime. So I'm gonna do my best to push that black on black crime thing to the side and just talk about what we all know, that there are some issues, of course, internally in our communities, right? And along with all of the other reforms, I believe, and I want you ladies to tell me what you believe. I believe that if we take some responsibility in that, first we got to own it. You know, we've been talking about it behind closed doors, but we won't get on a forum like this and talk about it, right? But I think that we have to. And I think that if we're going to say that Black Lives Matter, we have to make this issue in our own communities part of the forefront. Just like I think, T, I think it was you that was saying that you witnessed the brothers in the community get on the ground with that young man who was being arrested and encourage him, stop fighting. We're at the point of arrest now. You know what I mean? Let these brothers take you in, and we can fight it from the other end. But as of right now, bro, you under arrest. That was the community policing itself. And we do have some ills in the community. Now, there's a whole nother discussion as to how we got here. I ain't gonna mess with it right now. Tia, we'll come back to that on next Saturday, right? But but what I am saying is I believe that we have to own it, and now with the same vigor, with the same intensity, and with the same compassion, say, okay, what are we going to do internally to help the crime in our own communities? Because I think if we help that, that will also have a serious effect on what they can and will do to us externally. And Tisha, I'm gonna start with you on this one, and then we'll go to Tia, and then we'll go to Laura Shay. We'll start with Tisha first.
Okay, what was the question again? I was listening to you, so it didn't.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to you. I'll start with Tia, and you catch up with us.
Okay.
Tia, go ahead.
Oh, great. Because I'm probably going to have to hop off. I got a 1 o'clock. But so I'm kind of public enemy number one when it comes to our own people, because I'm one of those people that holds the mirror up, because I think one of the hardest thing to do, even as an individual, is to look internally and look at what your flaws are and say, you got a bad attitude, you don't handle money well, it's hard to kind of, look at yourself and admit some things. And I think the same thing happens in our culture. As soon as, I say something about, well, no, we were wrong there. It's like, how you gonna say we wrong? That's not a, it's like, okay, well, okay. But when it comes to black on black crime, as they say in the media, I don't really care for that term either. And maybe this is my own ignorance, but I will say that I do think in our culture it happens a great deal. I do think that it's definitely present. I do think that, when you see things like 46 murders in Chicago on the South Side, I mean, that's kind of hard to turn away and say, oh yeah, well, that happens in the white community too, because I mean that's a great number. And I mean, it happens in California, happens in, so many places. So it's definitely present, like you say, own it. But I think that one thing about our community that I think will help to resolve this is empowering us. A lot of time, I know, like back in the day, drugs and that type of level of crime, people had no hope. The system didn't work for them, they didn't have opportunities. I think a lot of that has changed in 2020. I think, even though we still got a long way to go, I think that the realm of opportunities has opened up greatly for us, even amongst all that is against us too. I mean, I'm a business owner. We have business owners now. We have Black people who are in executive positions, CEOs of companies. So those opportunities are different there. So I do think, again, it has to be a combination of things. Mentorship, which is what the Boys and Girls Club were stood up to do, is to mentor people in low income areas, to give them hope so that they can come up out of that situation. So I think that we need to get back to that, because what has happened throughout time is social media, devices, so distractions are there. So we do not have that community presence anymore. We don't have that sense of taking someone else's child on, or caring about others, because we're so focused on our grind or focused on our own thing. So I definitely think we need to get back to that. And the thing that's been really running rampant right now is buy in Black. I think that our community has to step up when it comes to supporting our own, when it comes to educating ourselves on all these financial opportunities, investment stocks, owning businesses. I mentioned this on one of the other calls. When it comes to our children who are in school, one of the things I did with my daughter is I never encouraged her to work for any company. I always encouraged her to own her own. When she said she was going to be whatever in college, I said, okay, well, you're going to own your own practice. I spoke that into her early, because I wanted to give her that mindset that you can own your own company, you can have employees, you can be your own contractor, or whatever the case may be, because there is no power if you don't own anything. So I think that we should, as a community, step up when it comes to supporting each other and empowering each other, and really taking a look at, again, taking a real hard, uncomfortable look at ourselves and see where we need to be improving, and helping one another out. I think, again, that sense of community has to be restored some type of way. I'm still like that. Like, I'm surprised I'm even here, because I'll be in the store and I'll see a kid acting up. I'll be like, what is we doing?
Yeah, that's
You
right.
know, why are we acting up? You know, what's going on
Real
here?
quick,
You
Tia.
know, and that's
I,
not even my child. I'm just
yeah, I hate to interrupt you, but I know you got to go. I want to ask your opinion real quick before you go, because these two ladies can stay for just a few more minutes. I want to get your opinion on where you stand with the Confederate monuments and the Confederate flag, real quick before you go, please.
um I think that okay, so you may not like this, but I definitely think that I support the movement. Let me just put that out there like that. But again, I think more complex. I think it's a great movement, but again, it's just an action. It's just a symbol. If everything else is still present, but we remove this Confederate flag, we remove this monument, but we still got racists on the police force, we still got racist judges, we still have, then, really we're just, I mean, taking those things down is not going to change the mindset, or the heart of man. So when you talk about aesthetically, I think I support the movement. I think what it represents is definitely, a moment in time where, we were enslaved and they supported us being enslaved. They did not want us to be free. So I definitely think from the perspective of what it represents, it should be removed. However, I stand by, um, in and of itself does no good if we don't put a call to action for us to, penetrate these voting booths and penetrate these police forces and penetrate these judicial system and penetrate. If we do not do that, then it's just aesthetics.
Thank you. I know you got to go. Thank you so much for your time. You have
No
been
problem.
awesome,
My
and
pleasure.
you added
Bye,
greatly.
y'all.
I'll be calling you
All
again.
right.
Don't worry about it. Thank you. Okay, ladies, we thank God for Tia and Paula had to go because her connection just would not remain reliable. But for LaRasha and Tisha, I'm gonna excuse me, Laura Shay, Tisha, I'm gonna come back to you. I'll present the previous question. When it comes to crime in our community, the question I was asking is, where do you stand on us taking that full on, acknowledging that we do have a problem. And like my dad said, yeah, we got to reform the police and the judiciary and all that. But some we got to reform our communities. Where do you stand on that?
I
Um,
agree
Hold
a
on,
hundred.
Keisha. We're gonna do yeah, we'll do Larasha first. Come on, Larasha. Then yeah, we're gonna do you.
oh,
Then we'll come.
okay. um, when it comes to black on black crime, that is non-existent. And you're not changing my mind on that one. I stand strong on that because black on black crime is like it was to divert the attention back to spew hate back into black people against black people. Because ain't nobody talking about the crime. And I said ain't, I'm very educated, okay? But still, ain't nobody talking about the crime that is happening in Chinatown against Asians. Ain't nobody talking about the crime, the Hispanic crime that's happening against Hispanic gangs, against the Hispanic community. Like you said, white on white crime. Nobody's talking about the massacre shootings. Why is black on black crime so prevalent? And we, like I said, we ain't gonna go there, but if you want to be real, research how black on black crime and guns and drugs entered our community. But we gonna stop there on that one because, like I said, that's a whole nother show. But um, I do believe that, like Tia said, we have to police our own. We have to get. I remember growing up, and even growing up with my great grandmother, the neighborhood watched out for the neighborhood. When you got in trouble in school, by the time you got home, you probably got 10 butt whooping from every single house. And then you got home, you got whooping by your mama. And then when your daddy got home, you got in trouble again. And then when your grandma found out, because by then they done had a whole three-way call. And then you go to grandma's house and she whooped your butt. So, like, what happened to the community policing of ourselves? And that comes from lack of resource. When People are bored, and this is just a natural human thing. When you are bored, sometimes you do stupid stuff to entertain yourself. And so when we start taking time to where you're sitting around being bored, thinking of doing these things, or you have no other resources to do things, when we take that time away from you, then it can go down. When we police each other, then it can go down. When you stop getting so defensive that someone's trying to tell you what to do versus someone's trying to help you get ahead, then it starts getting smaller. Because think about, I've had drug dealers in my family. I'm not gonna lie, and I did not condone it. But when I asked them, because they went to jail for a long time, when I asked them when they get out, I said, "Why did you do it?" They said, "I ain't had no other way." There was other ways, but they didn't know of the other ways, or they didn't take the time to learn the other way because it was easy money, right? So when and then you're getting blocked so many ways to be business owner, to own land, to move ahead in the corporate world. So when you come up against these odds, sometimes it's easier just to do easy instead of coming up against these roadblocks. So when we think about the crime in our community, we got to get down to the root of the issue. It comes from being oppressed for so long, and that was the only way we knew how to get out of it. People say, "Oh, well, there's WIC." Well, when you look at WIC, it wasn't set up when it initially was set up, it was to help the Black community because drugs were involved. But once our oppressor took over it, it was to keep us oppressed and keep the Black man out of the household, because they tell you you can't get on WIC if you're married or a husband or this or that or whatever. Where's the male figure in your life? And so then that becomes, well, you got to get kicked out. Now he can't be around his family. He done got around bad influence, and now crime is happening in our area. So it's a lot of parts that come into it that has to be fixed. And you just have to realize what area you want to help and help that area, because it is a lot to help communities in the crime that happens. So
Thank you
I can
so
go
much.
on about that. But
We'll bring
I
it
can
back on another
agree.
Saturday. Go ahead, teacher.
I can agree 110% of what Laura Shay said. There are a lot of moving parts within the Black community. You know, I always say WIC, like Laura Shay just said, that it was intended to help, and then they removed the Black man who was the head of household from, from the household for a mother to receive WIC for her children, to receive, assistance for HUD or those type of payments. There cannot be a man within the household. So you basically show to a Black man that there was no need for him. And one of the things that I say about men in particular is that men, in my opinion, thrive off of being respected, being hardworking, and having loyalty. And when a man, in my opinion, feels like he's missing those things, sometimes a man can act out. And therefore, within the community, there can be crimes within the community. I also agree that there are white on white crimes. It's crimes within every community. I also agree that it is sought out to speak about the Black on Black crimes because it just puts it in the forefront. But we need to all address the issue, with crimes in general. I think it's a horrible thing. Being a Black man, you are strong. Even when you go back in slavery, you were separated from your family. You were being sold because you could perform a certain type of way. And now it's just like society has emasculated a Black man. You can't provide for your family. You took my family away. You take my family, you set them up over here. I was supposed to be included in the equation. So after, ostracizing a Black man in so many different ways, um, you know, it, it can cause a person to think, well, what is my value? And I think every man, especially black men, need to know that they are needed, that they are valued, that they are part of the family, they are a part of the community. Men need to know that they are needed, and just because you have brown skin or black skin, that you are automatically considered a threat. You could be a tall, dark as midnight black man, 6'4", 250 pounds, but you can be a gentle giant. Don't just judge me by what I look like. Judge me by my character. How do I treat you? How do I deal with you? I the same man that I can be black as night. And then you're clenching your pearls when you walk into the elevator with me, but I'm the same man that you expect for me to help you when you have a flat tire. Let's look at the whole entire equation. I would also agree with Laura Shay. Again, it goes to it's very complicated. It's like trying to put a 99 piece, 100-piece puzzle together, and 99 pieces don't fit. We have to have a place for our black men. Again, men need to know that they are needed, that they are loved, that they are valued, and this would, to some degree, um, stop so many of the things that are happening within the community, because they have the need, they are a part of. If you have different resources, again, we're talking about resources that are allocated within the community. So many things have been taken away from the black community, where you had the boys and the girls club, the after school activities, all of that, because it's being cut down from the top. Oh, you taking away all the things, the arts and the crafts, the things that keep people out of trouble, these little kids. You have the mothers that are within the household that have to work 2 and 3 jobs to maintain. So you have a 12-year-old little boy that's taking care of his younger siblings, and then he gets into trouble because there is no man in the house, because you told him, daddy, that he was never needed. So you have these young kids that are coming up in society that they don't know the part of the black man. And every child needs a mother and a father, be it black, white, Puerto Rican, Haitian, red, green, yellow, Roy G. Biv. Um, it takes both mother and father to raise a child, because there are things that children need from both parents. And if you take the black man out of the community, it leaves a void. And you have little boys and little girls that have these empty holes in their hearts because it's things that they're missing. And so many of our men that were little boys back in the day, they don't know how to be a man. So it is so many things that we need to encompass to repair the black family as a whole, to help build our men up, to say, again, we love you, you need it, you're important, you can do this, you are a king, our princess. Th- these are all the things that need to take place and that happen to rebuild the community. And within the community, we need to have togetherness. I think it goes back in time. There was so much oppression. You had the slave that was in the house, the slave that was in the field. There was divisiveness from the beginning, which made you feel like you were better because you were in the house, or that you weren't all of that because you were out in the field. It's so much divisiveness that goes back from slavery time up until now, and we have not gotten away from it. Yeah, you can hear the people that say we've been, slavery happened 400 years ago. What are you complaining about? That didn't impact you. But those are the same people that talk about it's our history, it's our heritage. You know, let's talk about it.
When you were talking about the divisiveness, I don't know if you read the Willie Lynch
Mm.
thing, where the Willie Lynch letter that he sent down to the South on how to control enslaved people. And what you said was exactly what he said. Put your light skin in the house, leave your dark skin out, turn your
I,
your older against new, your women against men. Like he told you how to mentally manipulate us to turn on each other. And he said, if you do this, it will literally take them 200 and something years to come out of the mental set. If you have not read this letter, we're just only 110 years in of his 200 and something years of mental mentality, right? So we got to fix our mental mentality. And when you think about it, that's why there's so much crime happening. Like you said, the resources. When you talk to gang members, I watched a documentary. Most people join gangs because their family kicked them out, jobs don't want them. They join for love and loyalty and, like you said, respect.
Yes, I want to address this, and then we're gonna do our best to move on to the Confederate monuments. Then we're gonna wrap up because we can go on and on and on. My point of view: most of the issues that we have in the Black community are based upon the breakdown of the Black family, and I'll start from the Black man. Many times, the Black man is absent due to uh, prison by way of drugs, by way of gangs, uh, by way of violence. And then so many Black men have been taken out of here by way of murder, death. So when you remove the father, not just from the home, but from the community, you have a void that only another man or group of men can fill. The real issue is a sin issue. That's the issue. Because no matter what faith you follow, right? I won't even make it a Christian thing, even though I am a Christian and I come from the teachings of Jesus Christ. But you line up the major religions. If you follow those tenets, we will not commit crime. We will respect ourselves. We'll respect our women. We'll respect our men. We'll respect our property. We'll save and invest and work and operate honestly. Now, if we did that, then how many problems do we have in our community? Now, I'm not beating us. I'm speaking about where I stand with this. So we got to take a look at turning back to God and doing things God way. We have to do things God's way. We have a sin problem. We have to teach our children to respect themselves. Baby mama, baby daddy is not funny. No man should have 8 kids by 6 different women. Okay. Uh, Now I know that is a social ill. We have ladies that got 5 and 6 kids by multiple men. I understand where we are. We can't do nothing about that, right? Because we there. I'm talking about going forward. Because if you talk to that man who has fathered all these children by different women, or if you talk to that woman who has allowed herself to be impregnated by all these different men, I bet they would tell you that knowing what they know now, if they could go back, they would do it differently. But this is teaching. And some of the teaching is skewed because, like I said in the very beginning, the family has been broken up. And when you
Hmm.
give a young girl Section 8 food stamps, a welfare check, and tell her that no man can be present for her to receive these, you've given a young, immature woman the wrong signs. And so I don't blame that on the government. I'm looking internally and say, where is her mother and father? Right? Now, I do admit we have some great mothers and fathers who did all they could to raise their children the right way, and some of these children are just rebellious. I get that. I don't think that's the majority of what's going on. I think most of this starts at very early stages, whether daddy is gone from being in prison, or daddy is gone by murder, or daddy is a 35-year-old boy who never grew up because he didn't have an example. And his only examples were those other immature, violent men who were parts of gangs. I don't mess with the ladies too much because I'm not a lady, but I'm going to talk to the ladies from a man's point of view. And I want every lady, especially a young lady, who hear this to hear me. Baby girl, you are the prize. You got what every man wants, and it is not below your belly button. Every man wants to be loved and respected and cherished and accepted and loved on, you have the ability to do that. And if you will abide by a standard that you're not going to do certain things, and to not only he put a ring on it, because he could put a ring on it and had a ring there for several years before we put some law and some paper on it. Certain things not going to go down until we put some law and some paper on it. So that when the children come along, they come along in a household that is stable. You call that what you want to call it, but that's called a stable family, right? And when we're dating, bring these young men and these young women around your family so your family can help you decide whether this is the one or not. You go off and you make decisions that you're going to pay for later. And when you get knocked up, the same daddy or mom that told you that joker was sorry, you'll be right back in there asking them, can you move back in? And they help you take care of them babies. We're going to do it because we love you and we don't want to see our grandbabies out in the cold. But I'm talking about the family. Now, some of y'all going to disagree with what I'm talking about. That's all right. But I know that what I'm saying is right. We got a sin problem. We need to turn back to God. And we need stable families. Now, here's where we are, right? With all these ills in our community. Right now, we don't need a whole bunch of preaching, right? I think I just did enough of that. What we need is help. And so I want to see the brothers, because I think this going to have to be led by men. I want to see the brothers come into the community and be big brothers and father figures to all these children whose dads are dead, incarcerated, or haven't grown to the level of maturity to realize that they have a responsibility. You got a lot of dads who are healthy and happy, they're just not being daddies to their children. And somebody say amen.
Amen.
So we need that kind of presence. Now, it's not just gonna be huggy, huggy, kissy, kissy, lovey, lovey. Some of these children need a stern hand. That's what they need. Because we got to get back to doing what's right. Now, that's my most humble opinion. You can agree or disagree, but the family has been broken. And for us to get back to reforming our community, you got to start with the family. Amen. Now,
Hmm.
we're going to wrap up with this, ladies. We at an hour and 16 minutes. So I want to get this one and go out the door and save some for next Saturday, right? So, Confederate flags, Confederate monuments. Laura Shea, we're going to start with you, and then I'll come to you, Tisha. I want to know where you stand.
I agree with Tia. It is just a formality to me. It's just a statement piece, but it doesn't actually bring change. I agree it shouldn't be up. We shouldn't glorify that at all because it does represent slavery and it does represent wrongdoing towards a human being, period. Black people. So I don't agree that it should be up, but I also feel that sometimes we take our energy and put it in the wrong place because it's easier for me to tell you to take a statue down because you'll do that with no problem, not to hear me. But it's harder for me to say police reform and actually bring a committee together and what that looks like and get it done. That requires a long haul versus take the statue down. All right, we'll take it down. Like when Black Lives Matter, everybody was putting up black posts and take this down and we're doing this and we're doing that. But all we were saying was stop police brutality. Nobody still addressed that. Like it's like you were putting a band-aid, a pacifier on a open sucking wound.
Mhm.
I need proper treatment, not a band-aid. So yes, thank you. Thank you for taking the monument down. Thank you for taking it down. But when are we going to address what we're really asking for? Stop police brutality, sentence fairly, stop judging me on my hair. It's crazy that I have to have a Crown Act that ain't even in all
Oh,
states. for
Talk
me to
sister.
wear what grows out of my head. Like, thank you. I agree. That's someone's fight, that's someone's battle, and that means a lot to them. And I'm not saying that it's not important, but what I'm saying is I want systematic change. I want things that are going to make my life better later on. Because how many of us really go look at these monuments? They're not really like out in the public. Most of them, you got to go places to see them. They're not affecting your everyday life. So yeah, thank you for taking it down. But I want real change. I want things that are going to make my children's life, my grandchildren's life better later on. And the statue just isn't it for me, for somebody that hurts them. And I'm not negating that. So I'm glad that it's happening for you, and I'm glad you have peace with the statues and the flags coming down. That's just not my fight.
I got you. Tisha,
I would agree. For me, I would like to see the Confederate flag removed along with the monuments because it represents so much cruelty to our black people. However, just because and this is where I agree with Lorche, just because you remove statues and flags does not change a person's heart. I'm looking for a change as a whole, the human race. Black Lives Matter, to get to a place where we can get to say that all lives matter. But right now, the Black lives are in distress by way of police brutality, the criminal justice system. I think things that where we can improve is these individuals that represent the different states. I think it's representatives, and I don't know all the correct terms, but the individuals that support us in Congress and all of that. That needs to be the change because there in lies where some of the problem is. You have these older white counterparts that this is their thought process. They come from the deep south or wherever within the United States, and they have this outlook that this is how we've always done it. All of us know how this is how we've always done it because most people don't like change, but it has to be a required change for the human race as a whole. Don't look at me just because I have black or brown skin and you make an assessment on me at the same time as black people. We can't just automatically look at a white person and call her a Karen or call him an Adam or a Steve because that's not always the case. We can't be so quick to judge a book by its cover because a white lady can have a chocolate grandbaby and will take your head off behind her baby. At the same time, that goes both ways. So we need to get to a place as black people, white people, the human race as a whole. We need to progress to get to the point where it is liberty and justice for all in the pursuit of happiness, and we're all standing there side by side. Not you have a head start before me because you're white, or I have to stand in the back because I'm black. It should be we should be standing together. If we're gonna make a change, it should make a difference. Whether I check box, whether I'm Native American, if I'm black, if I'm other, if I'm this, if I'm that. If we're gonna call it equal, let's call it equal. You're gonna hire me because I'm qualified for the job, not because I'm black and I'm gonna be the token, or not because I'm Asian or I'm a woman. Kill two birds with one stone. It should be equal across the board. Let's reform everything. The police, the criminal justice system, the laws of the land across the whole. Then we can get somewhere, but it starts with each individual. We have gotten away from helping our fellow man. We basically put everybody on the island, every man for themselves. And it's supposed to be if you see a person that is in need, I don't care what your color is. If I got $1 and depending upon your situation, I give you a quarter, I give you 50 cents, I give you the whole dollar depending on what your need is. You need that dollar more than I do. You should be able to help somebody, and it doesn't make a difference what they look like.
thank you. I'm gonna wrap up with my few little words about it. If anybody follows me and follow my videos, I've spoken about it several times, but I'll wrap it up by saying this. I don't believe that everyone who is in favor of the Confederate flag and Confederate monuments is necessarily a racist. I don't believe that. And so I want to take that argument away from those who are throwing stones at us. This is what I would ask you to do. Sometimes we don't do a very good job at putting ourselves in another person's shoes? What if the tables were turned and it was your race that had been enslaved and treated by this nation like our race has been treated? And then a symbol of that treatment, which is the Confederate flag, and which are those Confederate monuments, those symbols were placed during a time in your nation's history where those people who had been oppressed were rising up and fighting for basic human rights. Most of those statues and that Confederate battle flag came to prominence during the rise of the civil rights era in the 50s and 60s. Okay, go do you read your history. That's when most of those monuments were spewed all throughout the South. It was a symbol once again to let us know to stay in your place, and that the eye of the Confederacy is watching you, and that the South will rise again. I said it before, and I'll say it again. The only place the South gonna rise again is in hell. Okay, we'll never be subjugated again. And those things are symbols of subjugation. It's not going to happen. I do understand for some how you could feel. I don't agree with you, but I do understand how you could feel a sense of heritage because many of you can trace your lineage back to those Confederate soldiers, and all of your ancestors did not get statues. I get that. But I want you to know that the same way you can trace your lineage, I've traced mine. And I've traced mine to sin. I have the bill of sale for several of my ancestors who were sold. So if your ancestors had won that war, maybe we would still be enslaved. When you can wrap your mind around that and have some empathy, compassion, and consideration for how it makes us feel, then we can have a conversation. I'm not going to bark at you. I hope you won't bark at me. We got to have a dialogue. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Is heritage not hate? I don't agree, but I understand. I'm saying if you want to fly that at your house, you want to look Confederate statue on your front porch, that's your property. But where we have to pay taxes, I don't want to see that. Now, I'm gonna wrap it up by saying this. Yes, I think we ought to take those things down, but I agree with all of the panel. If that is all we do in this movement, then we have failed. Those flags and those monuments are symbols. We not only want to get rid of the symbols, we want to get rid of what they are symbolic of. Our institutions in this country were built on racist ideology, and it is littered all over the documentation of this nation. And in some areas, it still exists. Yes, we have made tremendous strides, and we are very thankful to God for that. But it would be tantamount to putting your head in the sand to not see that there's still a problem. And so we're at a place in the movement right now where it's action time. Yes, there still will be demonstrations, there still will be marches. And if you roll with the people that I roll with, we always do it peacefully. We don't intend to go out and fight anybody. We don't take sticks and all that kind of stuff with us. We don't have any flammables. We're not trying to burn anything down. We're trying to bring attention to the movement, and we want to do it peacefully. But I do understand the rage that people have that will drive them to do certain things. And I also understand them suckers who infiltrated peaceful movements, and you know who you are, and you try to make it look like us peaceful protesters were a bunch of thugs. You've been found out and you've been told on, and we know who you are. And some of y'all that's talking that trash, y'all know who they are because some of y'all, some of them. Yeah, I said it. Now, now, ladies, we've had a beautiful conversation. I thank you all. And I thank the ladies who had to drop off, Tia and Paulette. I'm so sorry, Paulette, that you didn't get a chance to address us. I didn't know that your connection was so poor. Um, but maybe next time. I want to say to the audience, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try my best to make this Saturday at noon a recurring appointment as we move through the movement because I want to give voice so we can express ourselves. Tired of everybody else telling us what we think. We're going to tell you what we think. So
Hmm.
for those of you who want to be a part of this conversation series, You can hit me up on YouTube at Carl's Conversations. That's my channel, and you can look at it. It's spelled just like I got it spelled on my name tag. And if you break it up into two words, you're gonna hit Carl's Conversations, but it won't be me. It'll be another dude. Or you can come to my Facebook page, Carl Armstrong on Facebook, and we can schedule you into one of these slots. Tisha and Laura Shay, y'all are awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you for being part of this conversation.
Thank
And
you.
Crystal, you have hung
Thank
with us. She said
thank
she
you.
looked up today at noon. It was great. And Paulette, we thank you too. We thank Tia. There were a few others who were invited, but their schedules did not allow them to come. And we apologize. Maybe we'll get them on at a later date. Ladies, was there any parting comments that you had before we get off the air?
I know for me, I just want people to not be so quick to go back to your old ways, because old way doesn't bring new changes. If we want changes, one, we have to be the change, and two, we have to keep going. If you look at some of the past civil things, it took them 380 something days for the boycott the bus system before change happened. This is not going to happen overnight. It may not even happen in your time, but if we plant the seed, then our children and their children can have a better future than what we're having now. But like Tia said, we got to do the work if we're going to see the change. So whatever your passion is, your ministry is, wherever you feel you'll be fit, work within your lane. You don't have to tackle all of it because it's a lot, but tackle what is in your lane, what you can do and what you can bring to the table, because your voice matters, your vote matters, and your help to the community matters. It will never go unnoticed, because all it takes is for you to plant the seed in one person.
All right. Uh, Laura Shay,
Oh,
Crystal wants
love
to know
it.
what.
Lovett.
There it is. Love it. All right, Tisha, any parting comments?
Again, thank you for having me. And it is a blessing to be a part of the change. It's not always easy to be the person that changes. Sometimes you're looking for a change, but when you have to look within yourself and see that you also need to make changes and to be a change within your community, it's definitely doable. It's not always easy, but when you fall, you get back up and you try and try again. And we'll get through this. I remain hopeful, and we just have to do and be better, you know.
Wonderful. Larissa, I'm excuse me, Laura Shay, that was for you, young and knowledgeable. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Once again, this platform is Carl's Conversations. I know y'all are so used to seeing me on Heart for the Community Initiative, and I rock with that too. But sometimes I move some of the conversations over to this platform. We have some limitations with Heart for the Community Initiative. I don't want to do or say anything there that would cause a problem. And there's a little bit more freedom here to handle some subjects that might be a little dicey. So, listen, for even of those of you who disagree with what we've been saying, hey, I want to have a conversation with you too. That's the purpose of this platform, to have conversation. We can get to where we're going if we have an understanding. And all by get an understanding. We will not always agree, but if we understand each other, it makes it a little bit easier to get along and get to where we're going. So for Miss uh,
Laura Shay.
Larasha, Laura Shay, I can't
Laura
never,
Shay.
sweetheart, forgive me. I don't even get Tisha name right. I call her Honey Baby Sugar. And the only reason why I keep calling her name because she got it down there. If it wasn't, I would say sweetheart. So forgive me. All right. So for the panel, I'm saying thank you once again, and we'll see you next Saturday. Next Saturday, we're coming again. I'm going to put together another panel. We're going to talk about some similar issues.